car accident victims as a traumatized people is the high rate of car accidents in Kuwait. That was one of the main reasons why I picked this group, because we have one of the highest rate of car accidents in the world. My hypothesis was, it was hypothesized that there would be a positive relationship between religiosity of the traumatized individual and the person's well-being. That was my first hypothesis. It was also hypothesized that there would be a significant relationship between religiosity of the traumatized person and the demographic variables and well-being. Meaning, I made control of the demographic variables just to see if they would intervene, on the well-being of the traumatized person. Finally, it was hypothesized that different demographic variables such as sex, age, income, level of education, marital status, and nationality, and religiosity would have different effects on well-being. Meaning that what I did by using a type of statistic that which I'm going to mention later, I wanted to see out of all these variables like religiosity and all the demographic variables, I wanted to see which one of these variables had the most effect on the well-being of the traumatized person. The method, a total of 266 questionnaires were returned out of 400 that were distributed by 10 senior social worker students at Al-Razi Hospital, which is an orthopedic hospital in Kuwait. Like most of these victims and the family of victims, we sampled them at the orthopedic hospital, which is Al-Razi Hospital. The sample, as I mentioned, consisted of 3 groups, 25.6% individuals who were severely injured, and 41% relatives of those who were severely injured, and finally 35% relatives of individuals who died as a result of a car accident. The measurements that I used, or the scales, was a religiosity scale, which was used by a colleague in our department, and which was valid, and it was used in Kuwait to measure religiosity. And it's a short scale, consisted of 10 items, which measures religiosity, and most of these items concentrate on religious practices, like praying, fasting, paying zakat, which is, paying a charity for the poor, and, etc. Learning religious lessons, and what have you. And the second scale, I used a scale which was developed by an American scholar, which was valid in her study. She used it with elderly people, and I thought, after taking her permission to use the scale, that would be, acceptable to use it for my study to measure well-being. And this scale consisted of 6 dimensions. The first dimension is self-acceptance. The second is positive relationship with others. The third one was autonomy. The fourth one, environmental mastery. The fifth one, purpose in life. And the sixth one is personal growth. Actually, this scale, there is a long version, which was about, I think, 85 items, which was very difficult to use. And the shorter one as I remember, or as I call, was like maybe 14 items. So I used the short one, and it wasn't, the R or the alpha wasn't very high, so I had to use the longer one, and then it was okay. Okay, the results of the study, I categorized the results in 3 categories. Like the sample demographics, which I'm going to talk about very briefly, and then the relationship between religiosity and the traumatized individual, and how this is affecting the well-being of the individual. And the third result is the relationship between demographic variables and well-being. The fourth one, as I said before, I wanted to see which of these different independent variables, including religiosity, would have the most effect on the well-being of the person. And by using factor analysis or a stepwise multiple regression, I could find out which one of these variables had the most effect on the well-being. The sample demographics, as you see here on the screen, 85.5 of the study sample was between 18 to 42 years old, with a majority being Kuwaitis. 55.7% were males, and 44.3% were females. 45.4% were married, 42.1% were single, and 3.6% were widowed, and 8.9% were divorced. The education level of the study sample was relatively high. 40% had a university degree, 25.4% had a diploma, which is like 2 years post-high school, and 22.9% had a high school certificate, and only 11.4% had less than high school education. Incomes of the sample, 46.3% of the study sample were less than $1,335 per month. This is what they gained. An income of $1,338 was reported by 38.1% of the study sample. I don't want to go through all this. You could read it really quickly. But this shows the sample demographics of the study. My second result, the first one was descriptive. The second one shows Pearson correlation coefficient showed that the relationship between religiosity and well-being was positive, meaning that the higher was the religiosity of the individual traumatized person, the higher was the well-being of this person. This is just to make this short. Also, Pearson correlation coefficient were used to identify the relation between religiosity and demographic variables and well-being. The only demographic variable significantly related to well-being were nationality and income. For nationality, there was a negative correlation indicated that non-Kuwaitis had a lower well-being. You know, like Kuwaitis would have a higher well-being than the non-Kuwaitis. The income correlated positively with the well-being, indicated that higher monthly income of the traumatized person resulted in higher scores of well-being. Interestingly, the correlational analysis reveals that the time since the car accident occurred and the relationship of the participant were not a factor in the correlation with the well-being, meaning that it did not matter how long was the car accident. If it was, let's say, 2 months, 6 months, a year, or 2 years, did not affect the well-being of, or this independent variable, which was the time of the accident, did not have any effect on the well-being of the traumatized person. Because it was thought by the researcher that gender would play a role in the result, correlation were also conducted by gender. For males, significant correlations were found between well-being and nationality, education level, and income. Whereas for females, significant correlations were found between well-being and income only. The result indicated that for males only, non-Kuwaiti citizenship was related to lower scores of well-being, and that higher education levels were associated with higher scores of well-being. For both males and females, higher incomes were related to higher scores of well-being. The last step which I took is using stepwise multiple regression analysis to see which of the independent variables of which of the different factors had more power on the well-being of the traumatized person. The results indicated that the variables with the strongest impact on subjective well-being was religiosity. That was the first one. Followed by level of income and then age. The results indicated that higher levels of religiosity and income were associated with higher well-being scores. However, older participants experience worse subjective well-being than those who were younger. So age was correlated negatively with well-being. Because the initial Pearson correlation coefficient results indicated gender differences in well-being, multiple regression were conducted separately for males and females. For females, only religiosity influenced subjective well-being. This is by using only, the stepwise factor analysis or multiple regression. This suggests that about 30% of subjective well-being is accounted for by religiosity in female study participants, meaning that 30% of the power has, it's religiosity which affected the well-being of the females. Among males, the analysis indicated the most influential variable on subjective well-being was religiosity, followed by level of education. For male participants, these findings suggested that 27% of subjective well-being was contributed by religiosity and 20% by level of education. So what do we get out of this? That both males and females were affected mostly by religion or religiosity, to affect their well-being positively. But the percentage is a little bit different between males and females. With females is little bit more than females. This study indicates the importance of religion and religiosity and their relationship to other aspects of people's lives in Kuwait, such as personal happiness, family stability, and social coherence. Future research should take these variables into consideration when studying Kuwaiti trauma victims. Thank you.